Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, something feels different.
Yeah, something's a little off.
Yeah.
What is it? Something, it's not a bad off. It's just different.
I can't quite put my finger on it. Just something, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like just another day in the studio.
Did you get like a haircut or something?
No, I mean, I didn't put like product in my hair today, so maybe that's it.
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. It feels a little weird.
Something feels a little off.
Yeah.
All right. If you're not someone who's watching on video, you're probably like, what's wrong with these weirdos right now? If you're the audio only folks, you might want to step over briefly to the YouTube page. I'll put a link in the notes. We've got a new redesigned studio.
Absolutely.
We got to give a huge shout out to producer Mark Ryan. Marco, he toiled away at this. I'm going to point out this was mostly his idea. We had referenced the idea of maybe making some changes.
This is true. Yeah,
like he emphatically wanted to do it.
Like one of those just off conversation. Yeah. Hey, maybe we've been here for like 3 years now. Yeah. Shouldn't we do something?
Exactly.
And who knew that a producer, Marco, is also a great craftsman?
That's right. Yeah, you're already trying to employ him to do work for your house.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you like, so you got to hop over to YouTube and just see the studio now because the work is fantastic.
Go to YouTube, check it out. I'll put the link to the video in the show notes, or go on if you're following us on LinkedIn. You're probably going to see some images and stuff there too.
Yeah,
but you should check it out at least once. Check it out. See what we're dealing with. It's a nice redesigned studio. We got some nice tchotchkes on the shelves behind us.
Well, like I said, I mean, this set makes me feel like we got to up our game.
It kind of does. Like I feel like we're professional podcasters now. Oh,
we can't just play podcasters anymore. We got to do podcasting. Yeah,
I think after this long, we're closing in on 150 episodes of this show. I hope by now.
Yeah, okay.
I hope by now that we are actual podcasters.
Fair enough.
But
thanks, Marco.
That's not what we're here to talk about
today.
Right. And in fact, actually, though, because we're going to probably be promoting this episode because we want to show off this a little bit. So this might be somebody's first episode of the podcast. So our topic today, it kind of lets us talk a little bit about ourselves. About our views on the channel and technology as a whole. So actually, the impetus for this is fun though because when
it's Jody's fault, basically.
Exactly, we had Jody Costa on the pod. It's been a few weeks back now, talking about AI, ChatGPT, all of those cool new marketing tools.
Yes,
and she actually before she came on had asked ChatGPT about what questions she should ask the host of the TEConnect podcast. Now, for one, I should point out that when she asked about us, ChatGPT had no idea who we were.
Which, by the way, still doesn't. I checked this morning.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, my name is completely boring, so there's no reason it should know me. Maybe.
The TEConnect podcast still isn't on
okay. So either way, we weren't there, but it gave some interesting questions that she tossed at us and said, hey, maybe you guys could talk about these on the pod. Just some interesting stuff that you might ask a podcast about technology.
That's right.
And we figured, hey, sure, let's roll with that. Let's.
We are going to answer the AI.
Exactly. So that's our topic today. AI asked, we answered. We're going to get into stuff about how we started the podcast. Some thoughts on, insights that we've gained from doing this over the years. We're going to talk about emerging technologies, what we think might make an impact. It's a lot of us prognosticating and talking about things that, smarter people than us come on the show and actually normally talk about.
Yes.
So if you think that we sound like idiots, just know that most of the time, the people that are on the show with us actually know a lot about what we're going to talk about.
Absolutely.
So all that plus our usual value to the VAR. What's TEConnecting? What's TEConnecting with us? See, I'm already blowing it. Brand new studio. I'm blowing. We are not professional podcasters.
It's the fumes from the.
It is.
Yeah,
the wood
go.
fumes.
The wood
there
fumes,
you go. Exactly. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, Dean. Let's get into this.
Yes, sir.
Let's show off our chops and let's answer some questions. Let's answer some stuff that ChatGPT wanted to know about us or recommended that someone come on the podcast and talk to us about.
And before we dive in, though, dear sir, isn't it curious that ChatGPT is already old? Have you done the GP4?
I haven't yet.
GPT-4?
No,
I haven't
recently,
either. I was trying to investigate how to get into that. But as we said in that podcast, it's like, well, everything that we're doing right now is going to be old in like a few months. Well, It only took a few.
And I think what Microsoft has rolled out theirs.
yeah.
Bard, is that theirs or is that Google's? I don't know.
Yeah.
I got an invite to one that Google's doing, so I got to go check that out too. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
So there's plenty of stuff going on there.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
First question
Yes,
that was
sir.
tossed out. What inspired you to start this podcast and how has it evolved since the beginning?
Yes. Great question. So what inspired us to do this podcast? You know what? When I think back, obviously BlueStar's disposition is a value-added distributor, right? And one of the value adds that we always talk about is education. And in the fact that we are kind of a unique optics into the world, into our ecosystem. We're kind of in the center. You got vendors, you got VARs, you got ISVs, et cetera. And a lot of people are always interested in what is the distributor's view. And because primarily, a lot of times, if we do it right, it's an unbiased view in the sense that we got all this data coming in, all these inputs coming in.
We work with a lot of different
that.
vendors, a lot of different VARs, obviously.
So education, that value proposition to me was one of the main instigators of why we should do a podcast. We had investigated it a little bit. We have our scrums every year about what we should do in the marketing side that's new, unique, et cetera. And then, obviously podcasts had started to, encroach this world a little bit, or just not maybe this world, but just the
in
fact
general,
that in general, right? Because that's my second point is there's really no podcast in this world that like the topics that we touch on, the people that we talk to. So I think we all thought there was a void. So number one, education. Number two, there was a void in the space that was necessary to kind of fill, if you will.
Right.
So yeah. So I would take those as the main inspiration around, for me, developing the podcast. But maybe you have a slightly different view.
For me, it's just
you
because
love podcasts.
I just love podcasts. Yeah. And it's funny because I think I maybe mentioned this on the show before, but I remember when you interviewed me way back in 2017.
Yes.
You happened to, it may not have been during the interview, but maybe it was like when I was onboarding something. You referenced the fact that like, hey, we tried out some podcasts in the past. We might, I think you like recorded like just a random few episodes of Once Upon a Time, a long time ago. And like, that's something we might look at again in the future. And that perked me up because I was a big podcast fan. I was listening to way too many of them already then, even more so since then. And I remember thinking, all right, that's something I'm excited about. That's something I'd be interested in getting involved in. Now, fast forward, a couple years, and finally around the end of 2019, we decided to actually start talking about this and saying, hey,
if we're going to do this, what are we going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Let's actually maybe do this. And of course, I immediately was like raising my hand, like, hey, please let me in on this. You do not
more than
do
raising your hand. I think you
me.
tackled me in
probably.
the hallway.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it was an emphatic like, do not do this without me being involved because this is a dream of mine.
Yeah.
And you were very gracious to bring me in on that and start up the process. And then honestly, the timing ended up working out because we had planned on starting it early 2020.
That's right.
And if you recall, something happened. Something monumental happened in the world in early 2020 that kind of changed the way people, were able to connect with each other and get out and about and do things. Trade shows, obviously weren't a thing at the time. People weren't meeting in person as much. So it made a lot of sense for us to introduce a new form of content for us where we could still, bring people together, have great conversations about what's happening in technology, what's happening in the channel, what's happening with our VARs, software companies, et cetera. And here we go. This was born out of it. We started our recording. We formed our nice little COVID bubble here that, you, me, and Marco showing up in the studio together and hanging out, getting great people on the video to talk to us. And it's just, it's exploded since then. Like I said, we're closing in on 150 episodes.
Absolutely. And to that point, when you think about the second part of this question, how has it evolved? I mean, from the get-go, it evolved because we had originally conceived having people in.
Yeah.
And it was going to kind of be that thing where, back then, and now it's starting to get there a little bit, a lot of people being a distributor come to the office. We get vendor and customers and ISVs all the time that we're stopping by. So we're like, oh man, we just invite them onto the set and have a conversation with them. Boom, COVID happens and we're like, okay, we got to evolve, and everything went remote. Which actually, I think there's been some benefits there. We've had more people, different voices.
You don't have to wait for someone to show up at the office. Or
more topics. I think that we've covered that I we probably never even thought we would get into, and hopefully we'll continue to do that. So we had to evolve right out of the gate. Into
definitely.
that. So.
Yeah, I think it's been very challenging for us too to like have to think about new topics and to keep things fresh from year in and year out. I mean, there's only so many different ways you can talk about, retail or grocery or
a barcode scanner,
signage, a barcode scanner, exactly.
Right.
And I'm still always amazed by how we can still come up, and a lot of that's not us; it's our partners, our vendor sponsors, the folks that just want to do the show, people that we reach out and talk to and say, hey, we'd love to have you on. They're the ones that are coming to us and saying, this is a topic I'd love to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or we're finding something random and saying, hey, does anybody want to come on and talk about this? And I'm very impressed by the level of discourse that we're able to bring to this show, this channel. There's no plans on ending anytime soon. We didn't build this brand new setup here for nothing. We didn't read you all of this so we can end the show in another 10 episodes.
Absolutely.
We plan on going for a little while longer.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Our next question that ChatGPT threw out: could you share some of the most interesting or surprising insights you've gained from interviewing experts in the channel?
Yeah. So I thought I'd start with some of the top pods.
Okay.
I find that to be very interesting.
Sure.
And again, I feel like when you look at the listing, and so I went back and looked at some of the analytics that you keep and things of that nature. There's a wide variety of topics that were heavily watched and listened to, which was a little bit surprising to me. I don't know where I thought it might have gone, but I mean, so when you look at the top ones, it's the number one is "Store as a Medium" by Jay Hutton, which was just off the charts. We must have published that the right way or tapped into that.
I think visibility was out there promoting it quite a bit too.
Absolutely. So but that's interesting. So that's all around AI, the store as a medium, using it in retail media networks. Get into that later. Retail, another big one was retail consumer behavior. So no shock there. But then like leveraging service partners, the Alex Bowles one has done great.
Yeah.
So topically, contactless payments, future of digital signage, these are all ones that have ranked really, really well in what we've done there. So what's surprising, some of the insight that for me that came out of that is, when you look at when I think back on some of the episodes, number one, I'm still surprised when you think about the warehouse, how many companies still use Excel. And I know we talk about it a lot, but we validate it with people that we bring on here, and they're like, oh, no. Yeah, it's like 60% of warehouses out there.
The antiquated technology in the heart of our supply chain. Yeah.
So we must have a skewed view, obviously, because we live in this world, and we're like, no, everybody has this technology that we distribute. No. Only about 40%.
And I think, some of those end user surveys that we've been doing for Bluestar Nation that we've done episodes about as well, like that's been very eye-opening too, because I feel like it's helping us kind of either reinforce things that we think we knew but didn't really have the data to back them up, or telling us things that we kind of suppose. Like the biggest one for me is every time we talk about point of sale, whenever we've done these end user surveys, we find most people are actually pretty okay with their point of sale.
Right.
And I feel like from the moment I started here, and anytime you talk about point of sale, everyone just assumed, everyone hates their point of sale. They're ready to get rid of it in a moment's notice if something really cool comes along or something better comes along. In reality, most folks are kind of like, no, I'm fine with my point of sale. I may not love it, but I don't hate it enough to that I'm itching for a switch right now. So it's stuff like that I think has reinforced our perceptions about what's actually going on, not just within the industry, but the people who are actually using the technology that we're distributing to our resellers and they're selling to their end users. Yeah. I think there's been some nice insights around it. I look forward to us doing a little bit more with that too.
Agreed. Another insight, as I go around, I'm surprised at how many people, I don't know what my expectations were, but they'll come up to me and talk about topics that we're talking about. Like, hey, I listened to you on the pod and, I understand your take and I've got this take on the whole thing. And I find that very refreshing in the sense that, it's just nice to be out there and being able to provide a value, because everybody I talk to, I guess they're going to say, hey, you're doing a great job on there. You guys are great and that kind of a thing. But as long as the education and the topics are meaningful to them, which I do feel like we have been doing, it's very insightful to then get that feedback in a personal level on what they have to say as well. So that's been very insightful as well. And I think, to your point, we can continue to leverage that moving forward on the subject matter experts that we bring in and some of the people.
Yeah, I agree. I thought myself too, is like how many smart people that we have in this channel across a wide swath of industries, technologies, solutions, types of businesses that they work with and sell to
That's
and
a good
understand.
point. That's a good point.
I'm always amazed. We bring on so many people, and we've got some recurring guests that come in back from time to time, and they're recurring for a reason. But every year we probably have a good 20 to 30, I'd say, brand new to the podcast folks from somewhere in the industry, whether it's someone that one of our vendor partners has recommended to us, someone from an ISV that we've reached out to, someone who's reached out to us and said, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast and do this. And I'm always amazed by how knowledgeable and insightful they are, and how much they bring to a conversation. Again, behind the curtain peek here, a lot of times when I'm putting together like the questions and stuff for this,
We don't know.
I know just enough to be dangerous. I know just enough to know what questions to ask.
Right.
And I'm relying on those folks that we're talking to fill in the blanks there and really, give a meaningful, edge to that conversation. And they don't disappoint. They never do.
They never do.
So I'm always grateful for that, because if it was just you and me trying to riff on some of these topics, there's only so far we could go. We could scratch some surface. You probably know a little bit more than I do, just because you've been in this industry for longer.
Not much.
But there's some of this stuff that I'm like, we'll get a topic and I go, I don't know anything about this.
Yep.
And then we'll bring someone on and they'll have all this great stuff to say about it. All right, we're good.
No, I'm with you,
Fantastic.
because
I'm
I've
just going to
learned,
keep rattling off the questions, and they're going to make us look great.
and I've learned a ton, about with the guests that we've had on here, and that's been refreshing. It's given me new, perspectives on our industry that really I wouldn't have gotten had it not been through some of these folks that we've had on. So really good stuff there. Yeah,
definitely agree. All right, next question up here. This is the one that may be a little hard for us to tackle, but we're gonna try to get to this anyway. Could you speak to the role of diversity and inclusion in the tech industry, and what steps can be taken to promote more equitable practices? If you don't mind, I'll start this one here.
Sure,
because I
for
wrote
it.
down a few notes here. So, in my mind, this is one of those things. There's always room to improve. There's always things you could be doing better, and there's too many people in a lot of industries, not just this one, but certainly in the tech industry, that look a lot like us at the top of the top of the food chain. And I know this is two white dudes sitting here having this particular conveation. It's like, what do we know about
maybe
this?
we're not the best authority.
Probably
on
not.
this.
No,
Right,
but I agree that there's always room to improve, and there's always ways that you can make this better. So, and I think about the fact that like technology impacts everybody. It's not a it's a cross divide, whether it's gender, race, age, whatever it is. Everybody's impacted by technology in one way or another.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's beneficial for us to recognize and realize, like, hey, there's a lot more than just the people that we are and that we think we are and we think we know that needs to be talking about this. So I think it's always important for any company to look at the communities that they're serving, look at the businesses that you're selling to, and think about, hey, do we reflect them? Does our business reflect that? Does our company look like them? Whether it's, if you're a national company, does your company look like most of the nation? If you're selling locally, do you look like the people in your community that you're typically selling to? And just using that as kind of a stepping stone to understand, what it means to diversify, to be inclusive, and to understand what your company and your culture represents, and maybe ask a few questions about what do we need to do to be different? What do we need to do to meet, to bridge any gaps that might exist out there? So that's all I've got to say on it. I think there's always room for introspection. There's always room to kind of look internally at yourself, at your company, and think, hey, do we represent what we, sell as a whole, and do we represent the people that we work with as a whole? Because if not, if you feel like you look around and what you see within is not what you're seeing without and the people you're working with, that's an opportunity, I think, to change things up a little bit.
It's a tough question, honestly. I mean, the way I approached it is like, and maybe this is just the way I think, what part of the tech industry are we talking about here? Is it software?
Right.
Is it hardware? Is it services? And then I thought about, well, one of the hot topics right now in software is, for example, is algorithmic bias, right?
Yep.
Coding in biases. I don't know. I mean, to me, that seems like a pretty hot topic. And when you think about diversity and inclusion, I would think that would be very important to have software design and developers that could, bring different perspectives to your coding. But I don't know. My other
it's always nice just to have that person in the room that's able to say, "Hey, did you think about X?"
Right.
Because you might not have, and it's not. We're not saying it's bad that you didn't necessarily think about it, but if it's not something that's ever impacted you or your life because of who you are, maybe having someone that does point that out, that it can be impactful. To your point, like I think of like facial recognition for one. That's one we've talked about several times, where there's always an ongoing conversation about, how it relates to particular minorities or how it relates to particular groups. And that's one of those things I think those companies have to struggle with and figure out. And again, I think if you've got someone in the room that's helping ask those questions and making sure that you're addressing that, within your platform, that's a great start right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I don't know, and I'm no expert on any of this stuff. So that's why it's hard for me to answer some of these things. It's not necessarily my position to comment on it, but I think you've already tapped in on some of the things. I mean, obviously, when you think about it, education is one of those things that's very important, right? Having an educated prospects or people that can come into the workplace and add value. It starts with education. Culture is important. Right. Yes, a company's culture is important, and embracing that. But also, it starts with education and having. Again, I'm going back and thinking about software and how many people are going to college and getting degrees in software or electrical engineering for hardware development and things of that nature. You can't just create it out of nothing. Diversity and equity out of nothing. There have to be candidates. There have to be so I don't know. But this starts to get beyond where my wheelhouse of what I can talk about. I don't know.
Well, let's be honest. This conversation is beyond just the tech industry.
For sure.
It's every industry
For sure.
everywhere. It's worldwide. It's everything. But honing in on ours in particular, yes, there's opportunities to change. There's opportunities to educate. Opportunities to grow and diversify. And I praise any company that is willing to look into that, or take a hard look at who they are and and what they're doing, and figure out, hey, how can we make a change? Who can we work with to make that change?
Yeah. It's a complicated topic. So it was interesting that the AI asked us that question. It's like, oh, wait, what? We're just a podcast, dude.
AI is getting deep here. That's right. All right, next up here. What emerging technologies do you think will have the greatest impact on society in the coming years, and how should we prepare for their implementation?
What you got there?
I think this is a good one.
This is a good one, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So I'll give you a few that I came up with here. So I think AI is the low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit, yep.
We've already had episodes talking about it. We have more to talk about in the future. It's the topic that is on everyone's. I mean, we literally are doing a podcast based on something an AI spit out at us right here. So this is one that I think that people are going to be more receptive to, and that you're going to have to start paying more attention to.
Yeah.
But I think and this is where we got to, I think, in our conversation with Jody about it, that a big part of it is going to be able to be, actually not even with the conversation with Jody, but when we did the survey that we did from BlueStar Nation about AI, and we were talking about what what end users were saying about it for their businesses, and whether, hey, do we think that their business, is going to be using AI? Do they see an applicable place for it? And a lot of those folks basically kind of had a prove it attitude of, show me what it can do for me. Show me what it can do for my business. Show me where this fits in to my day-to-day work, and then I may be more invested and interested in it. So I think from our industry's perspective, and our VARs and our vendors, ISVs, everybody, if we're going to be trying to roll out AI solutions and impress them upon, our end users and the people that we want, that we think this could benefit, we have to be able to back it up with some insights and some knowledge and some understanding about how it can actually benefit their business and why it matters to them. Not really just rolling out there and saying like, "Hey, artificial intelligence, let's do it."
Right.
A couple
just to say we are doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And let's be honest, that's applicable to pretty much any technology you try to put out there.
It is.
But I think this is one in particular where I think a lot of folks get it theoretically, but don't get it practically.
Yeah, right.
And I think if you are someone who's willing to show the practicality of it and help people understand how it actually benefits them in their business and their lives, you're going to probably get yourself a little bit of a leg up as this keeps growing.
That's fair.
A couple other quick ones I wanted to note is, what have I got here? The next evolution of social media. Not something that impacts us directly from what we do in our industry, but I think in general, what social media becomes over the next decade, because we're starting to see, cracks in the foundations of some of these giants that have been out there for a while. I think is going to change a lot about how people, how people interact with companies, how people interact with businesses, how people do business themselves, how they reach out and get new customers. So I think kind of staying on top of that and just knowing what's happening there and paying attention, does it mean that you need to be doing more short form video? We've talked about that before. Does it mean that you need to be moving away from some platforms and focusing more on others to, to get the most bang for your marketing bucks, stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing I think again, I don't know where it's going. I have no idea whatsoever where it's going.
Yeah.
But at least stay in tune with what's happening so you're ready when something changes, and don't be the, as Jody referred to it, as the Luddite who decides like, no, I'm not getting
Head in sand.
I'm not getting into that for a while and being the
Right.
last one
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, yeah.
And
Fair
then the
enough.
last two I'll throw out there, VR and AR. We all know that's a growing place that just people don't really know what to do with just yet.
No, I haven't figured any of that stuff out.
I don't either. Honestly, I feel like the AR side, augmented reality, I think is going to be the more beneficial, I think, for our industry sooner than later.
Okay, I'm
because
with
I
you
think
there.
there's more opportunities to help people out by being able
Absolutely.
to create. We've heard about it like in manufacturing, for instance, the whole
right.
twinning concept of being able to, have someone be able to take a virtual walk through a shop floor or whatever, to check out processes and see where there's places that could be improved. So I think that's going to be kind of the big stuff I think that might impact. But, VR, metaverse, whatever you want to call that kind of stuff, I don't know where that's going to impact us yet, but it's worth keeping an eye on right now.
Yeah.
And I think the last one here I'll put in is sustainable technology, the electrification of our,
Everything?
our ecosystem, our economy. That's the kind of stuff I feel like is going to start continuing to grow. It already is.
Yeah.
You're seeing there's the race to electric for car companies now.
Yep.
So many companies that are introducing sustainability initiatives, and I think making sure that we're being part of those conversations along the way and helping out with solutions that can make that happen. Whether it is providing the mobile computers that can help, companies go out and set up the electrification and the grids that they need to do, or it's as simple as just, I don't know, introducing, solutions like what we talk about a lot with, EVC,
Right.
getting on board with that and making sure you're at the forefront of technology that's going to be needed in order to, sustain the electrification of the world at this point.
Yeah, I think there's opportunities there. Obviously, we feel there's opportunities there, and it'll be interesting how that impacts our world. That's taking a little bit of a narrow view of this question and how it reflects, again, our world. I think that there are going to be some impacts there. And one of them, I'll just kind of segue into one of the ones that I had, emerging technology. It's not really an emerging technology, but robotics to me, it continues to be one of those I think is going to have a great impact on society, primarily because of the labor shortages that we're having. So if you look at big trends and population trends and you look at the data, it would all indicate that obviously there's a population issue. Right. I don't know that I'll use the word crisis, but some people do. But I get it. I get the fact that there's not as many young people as there are old people, and their willingness or desire or ability to do what I would call more labor oriented tasks is obviously waning. It's clear in the data, at least here in the U.S. So robotics, I think, is one of those. I guess robotics, where I've landed is, robotics has had a great run in big manufacturing, cars, steel making, things of that nature. Okay, there's robotics, and it's been that way ever since I was a kid, kind of a thing. But now I think robotics has implications getting into our world that we live in.
Agree.
I'll give you some statistics when you look at it. So just breaking it down to warehouse robotics, it was in 2020 a $4.4 billion industry. In 2025, so in a couple years, it's going to be a $9.5 billion. So almost doubling in 5 years.
Yeah.
So it has a compound annual growth rate of 16%. That's huge. Okay, so that's warehouse robotics, right? So where is that coming from and who's doing that? I think that's going to have an impact on our channel, and I'm really, really interested in how that moves. You've got all the major players that have made moves into robotics, Zebra with Fetch and things of that nature. So obviously it's there. It's on the horizon. We can't be the Luddites and say, oh, well, that's never going to happen.
Right.
But what is the play? I know a lot of resellers. I've talked to resellers and what is the play? How do we play this? It's not a channel-friendly environment just yet. Where is it going to go? But some are starting to dip their toes and get in, buying their own robotics companies. Really, really interesting what's happening in there. But again,
we don't have robot in a box just yet.
We don't. So. But I bet you we will.
But that doesn't mean we can't. Yeah, that doesn't mean it won't happen.
I bet you we will, because one of the challenges that whole industry has is in the maintenance and repair of robots. So it's a very mature market, I guess, in the automotive industry. You know those big arms that you see and stuff like that? Well, that's already been there, right? There's companies that live and thrive on that kind of automation. But when you get down to the smaller robot that's going to be helping with pick pack or even pallet movers and things of that nature, well, you're going to have to repair that and stuff like that. So it might be a little different for our resellers, but it is a parallel technology that I really think is going to be of some interest there. So robotics was on my, kind of going back to your AR one though. I think that's one that's going to play pretty big in our industry, don't you?
Oh yeah.
In the sense that, when you're in a warehouse with a heads-up display, I know a lot of the companies are trying to master what was the Google Glass, nirvana.
Right.
Did you try the Google Glass
I did
when
not.
we had it, by the way?
It's funny because, and I think we've kind of discussed this before too. Like that's one of those things that I feel like may never quite catch on from a consumer aspect,
but in
has
a business,
wealth of applications in business and in supply chain.
Agreed.
And
because if you're picking something, or if you're on a manufacturing floor, right, and you're doing a certain part of the manufacturing, and whatever, the heads-up display could say, hey, that you're not doing that right, or warning over here, or those types of things. I agree with you. I think that we're going to see industry birth more of that in the AR before it gets over on the consumer side, right? Because you're just walking around. What do I need? The heads-up display. Oh, there's a sale over here. Yeah, I got it. Right. Which is a segue into my second technology that I think is really emerging. And yes, I kind of came out of this world, but I'm just going to say it. Retail media networks. I mean, I think that from a societal impact kind of a play, when you start to see the advertising dollars shift out of what I would call digital marketing, the Google ads and things of that nature, start moving into place-based advertising, which is in physical locations. Again, retail's not dead. How do we influence people when they're in place to buy? Right. That's going to happen with retail media networks. Some of the infrastructure that wasn't there before is now there. So to me, the next 5-10 years is going to look a lot different in the retail and hospitality space, all the way down to little shelf talkers, that can now be, obviously remotely managed, put a little AI in there, stuff like that. Information's going to get better. It's going to be more relevant. And things of that nature, and I think advertising dollars are gonna help drive some of that. There was no network in place where you, as an advertiser, Coca-Cola 10 years ago couldn't go on to a digital media network and buy an ad in Cincinnati, on a digital media network.
Just spoke to them,
exactly,
the beverage of the Cincinnati Bengals kind of thing, something like that. Yeah.
There was no network.
You had to buy local marketing, and that was it.
There you go.
The best you could do.
There was no mesh of digital assets in a location that you could just buy, right? Well, that exists today. Now those digital media networks are there. So as you put a screen up, you're just now another touch point within that. You are selling eyeballs, just like you're doing on the web and things of that nature. So I'm telling you, all that infrastructure and the cost of these things has come down now to put up a screen. You can get the ROI in less than a year on the CPM that you're charging for that. So it's going to happen. You're going to see. If you don't like screens in retail today, sorry. I think they're going to be
a lot more of them. Yeah,
there's going to be a lot more of them. And now the question is, and I know it's towards the end here, they ask the ethics question. It starts to blur the line as to, okay, so now we have information that's available. How contextualized do we want it to be to you? Right. Do you want it to be your information as you walk through, a la Minority Report, or is it? Are you
the unofficial movie? Of the
TEConnect, or do you want it to be agnostic and I'm just a middle-aged white guy, and it's going to serve me information to the typical middle-aged white? I don't know. We'll see. So that's an interesting one. Retail media networks.
Looking for that. It's funny when you were talking about that, because it reminded me of, I don't know about you, but back when when you go get an oil change, like if you go to a shop to get an oil change, and now more of them are the ones where you just sit in your car.
You're sitting in your car, right?
Which I think is a weird kind of a taking away an opportunity, because it used to be like, at least the ones I would go to, you would go inside and sit in their little lobby, and they always had a TV in there that was basically running a network of sorts that was just for them.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
Sometimes they would show you like little clips of like sitcoms or whatever, but then there would always be a bunch of commercials about like
products and services
that they have, or just tips for servicing your car, or when to do this, when to do that. And it was captivating. It was one of those things like, I'm not exactly a work on my car kind of guy. Like, I can do little things here and there, but I was always fascinated when I'd go and sit in there. I would find myself watching that channel. I would not be sitting there staring at my phone the whole time. I'd actually be watching their content on that channel. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing where I'm like, I'm surprised more businesses are doing this. And I think that's where we're heading. I think you're going to find yourself in situations. I think doctors' offices are starting to do a little bit more now too, where they have their own internal networks.
Absolutely.
But I think you're going to start seeing it, more often, where you're going to find more retailers and more random businesses that kind of have their own little random network of content that's running when you step in, that's providing entertainment potentially, especially if it's a place where you got to wait. But also is providing subtle advertising or even blatant advertising, depending on what they want to do.
And the top of the heap for me is ChatGPT. I think this is going to be the emerging technology that is just going to have a tremendous impact on society. I don't know how it's going to manifest itself, but I don't see it not having an impact, whether it's in education, whether it's in business, whatever. And it'll be interesting because I've been listening to podcasts, some podcasts, and they're like, well, some parts of our society are going to backlash against it, and they're going to be like, no AI schools. Like this school over here doesn't use ChatGPT, and so will they become the Luddites? Probably. I mean, right? Because you have to be able to use and interact with the technology. We don't want to be behind the curve, which is another point here. You don't want to I'll bring it up, Russia or China, going out there and embracing this language technology, utilizing it to its fullest, extent, only to quantum leap in front of other societies. So it's I don't know. That to me is a technology, and I know a lot of people are still confused over how it can, myself included, exactly how this is going to be used in business and stuff like that. But I can see the application is like, oh man. Yeah, this is revolutionary. And I think that, maybe at the end of the road, everybody has their little AI assistant, their little ChatGPT assistant. So you don't need to know who all the presidents were. You don't need to memorize them because you got that, which you do.
That's what Google is for already anyway,
Yeah, but it's more contextualized. And the things that you can do with ChatGPT are just way different than just that information. It was probably a bad analogy, but you see where I'm going here. Right? It's just the use case of this technology is really fascinating to me. So we'll see.
I agree. All right, next question we got here. How do you balance the potential benefits of technological innovation with concerns about privacy, security, and ethical considerations? Another landmine we're kind of stepping in here.
Yeah. I think this is a really hard one. Again, I'm going to go back to my retail media networks, which is interesting because that taps into the whole conversation around personally identifiable information, right? Do we as a society, as you're walking around, I guess most people are saying, I don't want it to be PII. I don't want my information to be directly attributable to me, right? Unlike other societies, that do that or are forced into doing that, it's not a part of our culture. So when you think about that, is the biggest threat AI in this regards? I don't know. Potentially, I think laws got to catch up. Legislation has to catch up. Things of that nature. But it's really, I don't know. How do you balance? The question is, how do you balance the potential benefits of technology with concerns of privacy? It's a balance. It is just that. It is a balancing act. How much are you willing to give up of your personally identifiable information to have, in air quotes, a better experience, in certain degrees. That's where it is in the. I don't know. What do you think about this question?
I definitely agree with that, and I think what's going to be interesting, and I don't know if this is something that can be done because there's a lot of money involved in it, but if there's any way to remove some of the incentivization for collecting data and what you do with that data. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, because obviously some of the companies that benefit the most from this have a lot of money behind collecting as much data as possible.
Absolutely.
And either
for
selling
advertising,
that data or using it for advertising, distributing it, whatever it is. And granted, I think, we're all working harder trying to figure out, how can we, to your point, how can we be willing to give that data without the expectation that data is going to be used maliciously in some way. So, I think that's going to be a big starting point, is figuring out, what are we getting and what are we doing with it? And I think if you're if you are an ISV or a reseller who's selling solutions that involve a lot of data collection in some way, you've got to be having those conversations internally about that as well, and be ready to answer those questions for your potential partners, because they're going to ask, and if they don't ask, their customers that might get that technology used on them are certainly going to ask about it at some point.
Yeah.
You know, I think we've all we're all hyper aware at this point of the potential dangers here and of all the data that gets collected about us. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm constantly trying to figure out, like, can I, what do I need to turn off here? What do I say no to for this? What do I say yes to?
Well,
for
it's
that?
overwhelming.
How's my experience going to get hurt if I say I don't want you doing cookies here or whatever?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Like I'm a fantasy sports player, and one of the websites that I like to use for fantasy content or whatever, every single time I go to that website on my mobile device or anywhere else, it's always popping up a little pop-up saying, like, do you accept cookies? And I always have to go and do a point where I say, I have to toggle off, do not sell my personal information.
Every time?
Every single time. Whereas most
annoying.
sites have that off to begin with, and you can toggle it on if you want to.
Yeah.
Who does that? I don't know. But I have to do it every single time, and I'm always annoyed by that. It's one of those things that just like frustrates me about going to that site because, and granted, I don't know what you're getting from me by doing it, because all right, you found out I'm a guy who likes fantasy baseball, whatever,
Right.
But
so what?
It's that kind of stuff that I think there's going to have to be some kind of turning point about how that information is disseminated, who's getting what, and who's getting incentivized for collecting that information. And again, that's, bigger minds than me are going to have to figure that part out.
But in the meantime, it's handcuffing your experience.
It
right?
is, exactly.
I mean, that's the negative part here, is that, because of some of those things that have been implemented, all you want to do is get into your fancy baseball, right? And then you want to log on so you can see.
I know what is me
and
going
like
and
that.
checking out the latest rankings. What other kind of data are you getting from me that a company that does fantasy sports just doesn't need to know?
So there's rub
or sell
there,
to someone
right?
else.
There's friction there,
Yeah.
and so that's not the best experience. And I think that's part of this yin and yang that we're going to have to play. And and I guess some people just become, I don't know, exhausted by the effort, because it is. I mean, I can't imagine going into every single website that I go to, managing my settings. Does it do any good anyway? Because I'm still getting emails, even though I've unsubscribed five times from whatever service. And it's like, it's exhausting, right? So that's not a good user experience. So but I don't know, do you bring it on the hammer and just shut everything down? And then,
I don't know.
But then your experience is like, well, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a big question.
I also noted cybersecurity, which I don't have a lot to say about that, but I think cybersecurity is something where, we're going to have to improve the infrastructure around that in some way and figure that out, because, you're constantly hearing about breaches, you're hearing about, data leaks, you're starting to hear about vital industries and companies that are getting crippled by cyber attacks of some sort. And even something as simple as I just heard recently that one of these password manager companies got hacked.
Oh, great.
So, like, they're managing your passwords for you. They just got hacked, and now those passwords are out and about potentially somewhere. Like, what's the point at this point? Like,
I thought quantum computing was going to
that's
solve
true.
all
That could
this
help
for
out. And
us.
blockchain
Good
might
and
assist
bad.
with some of that too.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that angle. And the last thing I'll say here is, have you ever, you mentioned legislation earlier about figuring how that kind of fits into the piece. Have you ever watched any kind of a
C-SPAN?
legislative session, or a congressional session about technology where they're,
it's a joke.
when you've got
It's
a
a joke.
group of 60, 70, 80-year-olds sitting there talking about the hottest new technology, or any technology for that matter, with 20-somethings and 30-something tech startup folks or whatever, and they're asking questions like, so exactly how do you turn off the internet? Stuff like that. And you're like, oh my God, these people don't even understand the basics. This is outside of our channel, but in the world of technology in general, like, we have got to have younger people who are sitting in some of those positions.
Can you
of power
imagine some of
who
this?
actually understand the
fair.
world of technology and actually grown up in it, and
fair.
not folks who spent more than half of their lives living in a world where telephones came on a cord. And now suddenly
I
don't understand
put
what
myself in
energy
that category. But
that's
anyway,
true,
I
but-
can't imagine these staffers, because all the staffers are young.
Oh,
Right?
yeah,
I mean, they're all
exactly.
college graduates.
Oh, yeah. They're
just
behind
trying
the
to get-
scenes like,
and
oh
they're
my
like,
God, I
oh
can't
my
believe
gosh,
they
I
asked
got to try to explain what again to this. It's like, no, here's the on button.
right,
on your-
exactly.
I can only imagine. But
can you turn the internet off for 20 seconds and back on again? Will that fix everything?
Well, it does. That has a dramatic impact on society, right? I mean, legislation is so far behind technology. It's like
they don't know what to ask.
Well,
like they just,
and
they don't
when they
even
start
know.
asking the questions, it's long gone.
Yeah,
I mean, look at
exactly.
how fast this ChatGPT. I mean, how do you even approach that from a I don't know that there needs to be any legislation, but I'm just using that as a use case that here's the technology that's going. It's the fastest adopted technology ever, right? The fastest to 100 million users. I think it was like whatever, some ridiculous amount of days, not weeks, type of a thing. It's just like that is happening at such a rapid pace. I don't even know, even if you're a 20-something or a 30-something and you're in the legislative body, would you be able to?
Meanwhile, there are probably at least half the people sitting in our country's legislature that are going, what?
Yeah, here's my counter to you, though, because I've brought this up many times. I love my children to death. But they don't know they don't know how technology works. They just expect it to work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, Dad, why can't I get this thing to print? It should just print. Well, no, you got to go into your drivers. You got to. I mean, I know a little bit more about it. Well, I'm telling you, I don't have a lot of faith in the 20 whatevers and youngers. They're just they don't know how this stuff works.
We got to find that. We got to find that middle group, that middle ground group that understands how it works, but also understands the dangers of it, and also gets why we need it so badly.
Well, in all seriousness, we've talked about this. What you're going to see now are different layers of our society. Those that understand tech, those that have no idea how it works, but I'm worried. Those the people that understand tech can manipulate it. Are they going to have nefarious means? Some of them will. Yeah, some of them will do good. Some of them won't. And that's going to be an outlier or a result of some of this.
Yep,
so, anyway,
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, last question here. Kind of a little sneak peek thing for you, actually. It says, finally, what can listeners expect from upcoming podcast episodes? And are there any topics or guests that you're particularly excited to explore in the future? Well, hey, we don't honestly sometimes have like a huge, long,
this is what's coming up,
leeway of what's coming, but we actually have quite a few that are pre-scheduled here. So to give you a little look ahead here in the coming weeks, next week we've got an episode about retail trends for 2023, and we're bringing a couple of our partners from the EU, from BlueStar and the EU in to talk about
absolutely
not just
great
the
guys.
Trends impacting us here in the U.S. But global trends and maybe how those differ a little bit too. So if
good stuff.
Someone that's looking globally, you'll learn a little bit more about that. After that, we have a very special episode. We are actually, when this episode comes out, it would have happened already yesterday, but we're going to be recording a live episode of the podcast with a panel of marketing pros, including Jody Costa, one of those that's going to be on. Elo's sponsoring this particular episode. We're very excited.
I'm excited for the live events.
Yeah,
it's good.
We're going to have some folks on live with us to talk about marketing, and then we're going to drop that episode in the feed. But hopefully you got a chance to tune in live because you could ask some questions of the panelists if you needed to. But we are going to be doing that a couple more times.
Absolutely.
This year
Look
too.
out for the next one if you miss it.
Exactly. So if you missed it, keep an eye out. Make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or whatever. And we'll be talking about those in the future because we're going to do at least 2 more of those live episodes this year. Following that, we were just talking about electronic vehicle charging. We have an episode about electronic vehicle charging stations as
another
service
opportunity.
Or whatever. Yeah,
absolutely. Good stuff.
So that's coming up in mid-April, late April, and then we're wrapping up April with an episode on how self-service is changing retail, featuring a couple of our returning guests from Epson. So
good stuff.
We got some good stuff coming up on the docket here, and honestly, there's plenty of ideas. We're always bantering around, and people we're trying to get, and there's lots more stuff in the future. We'll be recording live at VARTech again this year, like we always do. So we've got those live pods coming up. I'm feeling like our schedule's already tightening up for this year.
It is. I know when you think about it. But hey, if you got ideas, because one thing I would like to, that we're hoping for is more reseller voices. More folks that can give us that some of those. Because they're subject matter experts. They've got a great angle on the business. So we're going to try to get some more of that going as well. Yeah.
So that leads us into our transition here, where we always talk about what you can do next and what you should be doing. So first of all, I'm going to assume that you are if you liked this episode, you like what we're doing here, that you're following our podcast, whether you are tapped in on YouTube, following our YouTube channel, not just for us. We do lots of other great content on our YouTube channel on a regular basis. So definitely make sure you are subscribed and following that. like our episode, if you're listening on YouTube, if you're listening on a podcast of your choice, give us a rating and review. It's a way, one, that we know that you like what we've got going on here. Don't just come up to me and Dean when you see us out somewhere or whatever and tell us about that you like the pod. Back it up. Give us a rating and review somewhere. It's not only helpful for us, but it helps other folks to find the show along the way as well.
Yep.
I mentioned it earlier. Make sure you are following BlueStar on LinkedIn. I cannot tell you enough how important it is to be following us there, because all the cool stuff that we do, we always put up clips of the show every week. So if you miss an episode, or maybe you didn't feel like watching an entire episode because it wasn't quite a topic you were really invested in, I hope you're listening to all of them. But if you didn't, I always do a recap of pretty much every episode on LinkedIn, so you can at least follow that, get a little bit, a little taste of what the episode was about. We'll also keep you updated on events that are coming up, webinars that we're hosting, places we're going to be. The 2U tour is kicking off soon.
Yep.
You should be following us on LinkedIn to make sure you're not missing out on that kind of stuff. And then finally, most importantly, to get what Dean was talking about here, we want to hear from you about what you want on this show. So, we've got slots open. We've got some great topics planned, but there's also plenty of room to fill in with more topics that actually matter to you.
Maybe you got a subject matter expert that you're like, hey,
exactly,
you guys should be talking to this dude or this gal.
Exactly. We want to hear from those. We want to hear those from you, so you can email that stuff to us. You can send us a note on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or there's always a link in the show notes where you can send us podcast topic submissions. And if you do it there at that particular spot, we will send you a TEConnect podcast t-shirt.
Dun, dun, dun.
Got a nice, soft, comfy t-shirt. It's got the logo on the front. It says, "What's TEConnecting with you?" on the back. Just for sending an idea, even if we don't use it, we will send that t-shirt to you. So please send those ideas in. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you want on the show. And as always, stay in touch with us by following us on LinkedIn. You can also find us on Twitter. That's at TEConnectPod, or email us, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, Dean, let's wrap up. We always have these recurring segments that we do at the end of every episode. The first of which is value to the VAR. It's kind of our way of distilling our conversation down a little bit, giving a takeaway for our VARs. On a normal episode where we have a guest, we're maybe kind of, giving them a takeaway question that something that our VARs can do right now to maybe improve their business or jump on board this particular topic or trend we're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question actually that the ChatGPT did throw our way. I kind of tweaked it a little bit for our channel, but could you share some of your favorite resources for staying up to date on the latest trends and developments in the reseller channel?
Interesting. Well, okay, so there's the normal ones out there, which, by the way, I will make a statement. I don't think there's enough media coverage in our world, right? We could use a little bit more media that's directly attributed.
Are we going to create a media network?
Maybe we should. I don't know.
But the VAR media network?
Yeah, I mean, but some of the typical resources I go after, like the CRNs of the world or associations and stuff like that. But where I'm at, where I have found myself utilizing more and more is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is like when I think about, okay, where am I getting my information about what's happening, product releases or trends that are happening? I'm telling you, dude, LinkedIn, I guess, is my number one resource for doing that. And it's become, I find myself joining more groups. Right. If I wanted to get a little bit more niche-y into a certain area, joining those groups. So hopefully I can get more tapped into some of the exactly. Yep. Those types of things. But to me, that, I guess, when I boil it down, because I thought about this, I'm like, dude, I think it's LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's my number one resource.
Yeah.
What about you?
Agree. No, I was just gonna, I'm kind of toot our own horn here a little bit, because we're putting out plenty of content that it should hopefully be beneficial to VARs and ISVs. This pod obviously is one of them, so I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you're hopefully following it, because we're always doing interesting stuff here, lots of different topics.
BlueStar Nation.
BlueStar Nation.
There you go. All right.
It's not new anymore. We're about a year old, I guess, on that blog now. But we're very deliberate about what we post there. We only typically put out 2 articles every quarter. We're trying to be very deliberate about stuff that is useful and impactful for VARs, for our customers. Understanding about the channel. Again, we're trying to do a lot of end user surveys. We've got some more of those that are coming up in the future. So it's very deliberate content that we hope is beneficial. So I recommend checking out that. It's nation.bluestarinc.com. There's always a link in the show notes for that too. Following LinkedIn, following us on LinkedIn. I think there's always a great place to be doing that. And then honestly, and we promote these on LinkedIn, but our webinar series.
Yes.
I've suddenly I host most of our webinars, and by host, I literally mean I just kind of turn them on, say,
Hit
hey,
the start
welcome in, and then let the other ridiculously smart people do their thing.
Right.
But we've got a lot of them coming up. There's been a lot of folks that are really wanting to do those this year. It's several of our different vendors and some of our ISV partners.
Yep.
And it's a great way that they will sometimes they do episodes, of webinars about trends that are happening. I know we had one about retail trends last year. Sometimes it's new product demonstrations. Sometimes it's deep dives into certain types of technology and why you might need them. Great way to to just understand what's going on in a particular industry or with a particular technology. They're interactive in the sense that you can get on there, and as you're listening, you can ask questions. We relay those to the presenters at the end. Good opportunity.
Webinars aren't dying, right?
They're not.
And
they're really
in fact,
not.
they're even more impactful today because with the whole work from home, people, it's just a shift in our society in the sense that you can have that on in the background, still get your work done, and still kind of learning along the way. It's a great tool. That's a really good one.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, tooting our own horn here a little bit, but I think we do a lot of great content that's
absolutely
very useful to our audience and to our partners.
Fair enough.
Definitely recommend you check out that. Yeah. All right, let's wrap up with our favorite segment each week. It's called What's TEConnecting with You. This is where we get to chat about something in the world of science, tech, innovation, business,
or otherwise,
just something that caught our eye that we just want to talk about. We want to share with each other and with you, and we want to chat about it. So, what's TEConnecting with you?
All right, so here's the headline: Why the floppy disk won't die.
I think I might have seen this. I didn't read it, but I think I might have seen that headline.
Yeah. So, were you aware that people are still using floppy
apparently
disks?
A lot more industries than you think. Yeah,
a lot more industries, despite the fact that they stopped manufacturing them. Well, the 3.5 inch. In 2010. So it's been 13 years since anybody minted a new...
I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time I touched one. I couldn't tell you
either.
Last time I had a computer I could put one in.
But when you think about some of the industries that are utilizing them, which this article went into, who knew? But apparently they're like embroidering machines are really big in
very specific.
Yeah. So they part of the story was this gentleman that owns a business that is involved in horse racing, and after the horse wins, they win an embroidered cover for the horse.
Okay.
And so his machine does that. Well, his machine actually isn't that old. I think it was built in 2004 type of a thing. But in order to get any design on it, you have to use a floppy disk. So and so this guy's like he's like, my whole business is this.
Right.
And if the floppy disk goes away, I have no business anymore. The scariest one for me.
So do you think he's got like a stockpile of floppies somewhere?
Does.
No one's making them anymore.
Nobody makes them, but there's a whole now sub-industry.
There's like a black market for floppy disks.
Well, there is. You laugh, but there is. So there's two things. Yes, you can still buy net new ones. There are people. There's this guy in California, Persky or whatever. He's got like a stockpile, literally a stockpile, and he's selling 1,000 discs a day. He says, still to this day, he's doing it, but he only has so much supply, and when it's out, it's out. But he's like 75 years old, and so he thinks he's going to outlive his supply. So, or at least for the next 5 years that he's willing to work. At this pace, he's still got enough. However, there is a black market where people are getting used ones and wiping them and then reselling them as refurb. So there's that whole industry out there. Okay, well,
hey man, you got floppies for me? Yeah, man, what you need?
Yeah, what you need? I got this one. So here's the scariest one because they had many different use cases of where floppies are still being used. 3.5-inch floppies are still being used to update the navigational systems of 747-200s. So these are older 747s. There's 36 years old. There's 20 of them still out there in the world flying right now as we speak, mostly in cargo airlines. None of them have people in them.
Say, do I need to start checking?
But the way that they do their updates is on a floppy. They're putting it in the cockpit and they're got a floppy.
Man.
So that I was like, ooh, see, that's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
The final thing here, apparently one of the first floppies, which was an 8-inch introduced by IBM in 1971, is literally on the verge of extinction. Like there's like it's really hard to find an 8-inch at this point in time. So maybe we've probably not in your and my lifetime. I don't know that the 3.5-inch floppy is going to die because they're still out there.
Yeah. Wow.
And there's still a need for them. Who knew?
Who knew?
Now
Yeah,
you
I
know.
feel like I came across that article and was like, I don't even want to know.
Nobody's
who's still
using
this.
these
Yeah.
anymore. Well, I just have such an
Oh,
affinity
man.
because I can remember.
Oh,
I've still
yeah.
got the muscle memory of putting a floppy
yeah.
in, waiting for it to spin up, all that kind of good stuff. Hearing
There
the
are
noise.
there are folks listening to this podcast that are going, what are
you
these guys talking about?
Exactly.
I mean, you talk about putting a disc in, and some folks would be like, "What are you talking about?" And we're talking about floppies, like even a compact disc. You know,
Yeah. So what's TEConnecting with you, my man?
All right, so one of these things you just don't like to hear about because it could be catastrophic. But talking about the bees,
Yes.
not the birds and the bees.
No, the bees.
Just
Literally
the
the bees, yes.
So this article I found in the conversation: bees face many challenges, and climate change is ratcheting up the pressure. Basically, and they actually had someone who does research into human ecology at the University of California, Irvine, or Davis rather, and basically read this article about how all these kind of things are impacting bee population, in particular honeybees. And now, if you don't know, the bee population has been under some threat for a long time. Anyway, there was weird instances, not too far back, just a few years back, of just entire colonies just kind of collapsing and disappearing.
Right.
I can tell you, my father-in-law has done beekeeping in the past.
Oh,
and,
really?
Has hives and boxes around his yard, and he hasn't had an actual colony show up in years now.
Oh, wow.
They've actually taking up residence. He used to frequently get them there.
Oh,
get honey
he just
from them
has
and
it out
everything.
there, and then the queen will stop by.
Yeah,
and
he would just he could attract some from time to time,
Okay.
and he has not been able to attract any for a long time. So
I'll be darned.
So there's been a crisis for some time anyway, and if you don't know, a bee population is ridiculously important to our entire ecology.
Yes.
Because
life in general.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny is, have you ever seen the movie The Bee Movie? Or I think it's just called Bee Movie.
Yes.
Which Jerry Seinfeld, for some reason, is the voice.
Great
of the bee.
movie.
Bizarre casting, and I didn't watch it for a long time. And I watched it, and
he
really
was a great bee.
it dives into this whole idea of what happens if the bees go away, and what happens to humanity and our ecology and our food supply, and it's not good.
It's not good.
So we need the bees.
Yeah.
So anyway, this article kind of just dives into some of the things that are going on with bees, and mentions that climate change is part of the problem, because obviously there's issues with, like, if there's drought, or if pollen is drying up and there's just not as much for them to move around and forage and get, bees might die off. Also, that when there's like intense high rains, like they mentioned, in the Northeast, when there was some intense rains over the last year or so, that a lot of bees won't go out and forage because it's raining too hard.
Right,
It's hard, kind of hard to fly around and do your gig, if
it's raining,
you're getting pummeled by rain, all the time. So.
Right.
So there's that. They talk about things called a scourge of what's called varroa mites, which are little mites that attach themselves to bees and feed on their body tissue, which makes it difficult for them to
bees
to maneuver. It kind of can deform their wings. And basically, so they're trying to figure out ways to kill that, but basically trying to create an insecticide that kills a bug on a bug, as they refer to it.
That's hard.
But then now insecticides are also an issue and still problematic.
Right. Yes, very much so.
Pesticides, microdoses of pesticides, especially for bees that form their, that live on the ground.
Yeah.
Something called junk food diets. This is not something I realized, but apparently, like, as we plow down, areas to create farmland, a lot of the farmland that we're creating, a lot of the crops that we're growing are not crops that are suitable for bees to be foraging from and taking from. Either one, because they either aren't flowering or are something that's actually not good for them and have some pathogens that aren't helpful for them. And the idea is that, like when they farm, they try to spread out more land in order to keep other animals from trying to come up and get near the farmland. But when they're doing that, they're getting rid of potential pollinating flowers that these bees might need.
It's deep, man.
Yeah,
it
and
is
basically
deep.
On top of all that, the climate change itself is a force multiplier between wildfires, floods, droughts, all that kind of stuff, and warm temperatures. So it was an interesting article. It was one of those things that you kind of read and you go like, well, crap.
Well, that's one of those things that's like, well, Mother Nature still is in control, and bees are really important when you dive into it. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I came across an article or something like that, like really discouraging people from using like lawn pesticides because dandelions in our area are one of the early flowering things that help bees. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. I won't
tell my HOA that, but yeah.
Oh, right. Well, that's a really good point, though. But they're very instrumental.
Yeah, definitely.
Bring back the bee.
Exactly. So that's what's TEConnecting with us. Until next time, get out your floppy disks. And,
sell them.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Sell them, man. Really can make a profit off of it. And I don't know. Help out the bees a little bit. Grow some flowers. in your backyard. Don't tell your HOA about it.
Yeah.
Hide them under a tarp or something. And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect podcast is brought to you by Zebra. Print better, print smarter, print safer.
Yeah, nice.
What makes a safe printer?
I
mean, maybe I know you can, like, cybersecurity can be an issue there.
Yes.
You can tap into a printer and wreak some havoc on a network if you're not careful.
Yeah.
That's the motto of Zebra's ZD series of 2-inch compact desktop printers. They're designed for a small footprint but big performance. The ZD series is simple to set up and use with easy integration, management, and security options. Now, among the various configuration sizes and options for any customer's needs are the ZD411 Advanced, ZD611 Premium with color touch display option, and 611R RFID printers. They got it covered here.
They do. Holy moly.
All of these feature next-gen technology engineered to grow with business. So check out the link in the show notes for more on each ZD series printer type. TEConnect Podcast is also brought to you by ELO. Look, Dean, self-service has never been easier.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of self-service.
Yes.
I'm a do-it-myself kind of guy.
When you think about trends, self-service,
Yeah.
that's a big trend.
Well, maybe not introducing, it's been out for a while, but it could be new to you. You know?
Right. Could be.
May not be. Maybe not.
What is it? Now I'm curious. What is it?
Am I hyping you up enough?
Yeah, really.
ELO's Wallaby Pro kiosk
Nice.
stand.
Yes.
The Wallaby Pro is changing the industry by making it easier than ever to configure interactive self-service solutions. Choose from wall, counter, and floor models engineered with configurations to fit any space in retail, restaurants, hospitality, healthcare, and corporate environments. Just add a 22, 24, or 27-inch touchscreen display. All right, you're looking for some more options?
Yes, of course.
How about a custom branded bagger board?
Like it? Yes.
Ceiling pole to minimize footprint.
Ooh, nice.
Add a printer, ADA keyboard, assist button. I wonder if that's anything like our cough button. Our new studio's got a cough button now.
Yes, I love
So
it.
you don't have to listen to me and Dean hacking up
away.
a lung in the middle of the podcast.
I need assistance. There it is.
We
right?
need
Boom.
assistance.
Boom.
That's our assist button.
That's right.
ELO had nothing to do with that, though. Sorry. Their buttons are much cooler than that. Use ELO's Edge Connect to attach accessories. Oh, and the Wallaby Pro stand offers easy-to-access concealed housing for a power strip, power bricks, compute devices, cables, whatever you might need. Pretty cool little device.
Absolutely.
Ready to help your customers design the most customizable self-service solutions? Start with the Wallaby Pro. Contact your ELO representative to learn more and check out the recent unboxed video linked in the show notes.